what this government will need to do is do as many things as possible to change the country that don't cost the Exchequer any money. I mean, it's interesting to hear Ed Davey calling for, an immediate budget for health and social care. Well, he can call for it, but they've won a lot of seats, but they still are, they're not the Labour government, and it's Labour who'll be doing it, and I suspect we'll have a budget in September.
Well, the man we call the People's Chancellor, Martin Lewis, joins us now. Don't worry, there's going to be...
You've had the real things in today. You're not...
Yeah. We've got plenty of ex-chancellors. In fact, we've got Kwasi Kwarteng back on set with us this morning. We just spoke to George Osborne. But seriously, Martin, cost of living was probably the biggest issue, wasn't it, in this election?
Yeah, it's been the biggest issue for a long time. Now, the first thing I should say is that congratulations to the new government. I think what we all have to do as a nation when you have a new government, regardless of which party it is wish them well and hope they improve the situation in Britain. And it does need improving. Our national societal infrastructure is struggling at the moment. Now, what I suspect is going to happen in the next couple of weeks is Labour, once they get fully into government, they're going to do some form of revelation saying, wow, the finances are so much worse than we expected. There's a big economic black hole. Things are going to be very tough, and do some expectation management. Of course, we all know that already, and you'll know, Susanna, because I've sat next to you when I've been doing it. I've been pushing candidates from all parties on what they're going to do to fill the huge black hole in the nation's finances. But I think what that means for the cost of living is that the new government will be looking for things that do not cost the Exchequer a lot of money to do. They're going to need in the first 100 days to make a difference to the country. They're going to want to show people that things have changed, that they mean action. They're going to be starting to deliver, but they're going to have to do it in a way where, unless it was pre-announced in a manifesto, it doesn't cost. So examples will be, and some of this is from their manifesto, some of this is from the leaders' debate that they ran on my website, and I've been rereading the answers from Sir Keir Starmer again this morning, from the Prime Minister almost again this morning. Rents. They're planning to build 1.5 million homes over the terms of the Parliament. Let's see if they can deliver that one. But they're also talking about finally banning Section 21 no-fault evictions. There is a huge power imbalance at the moment between landlords and renters, and that needs to change, and I think it will change. And the building home situation certainly should be helpful to mortgage holders. The retail policies, as they call them, the sort of pound-in-your-pocket policies on mortgages, I don't think are that big of great shakes. They're talking about a mortgage guarantee scheme to help people, first-time buyers with limited deposits. I think there's a lot more that they could be doing on that scenario, but it isn't in the manifesto so far. So everything I'm looking at the moment is all about what can they do without spending too much.
Martin, while we're talking to you, we're also watching Rishi Sunak leaving Conservative headquarters in his Range Rover. We don't know where he's going. We're just seeing those pictures now. Can I ask you a question about taxation? Because you've talked about that black hole in the public finances. And we know that Labour have said they won't raise income tax, VAT or national insurance. We know that they have talked about some taxes where they will move, for example, taxing private school fees, but they've been pouring cold water on a revaluation of council tax. Maybe they do something on inheritance tax or capital gains tax. Very hard to raise a lot of money from those things. Are there other areas which we haven't talked about, which a radical government could decide, if they've got a big majority, to go into? For example, could they look at land taxation? Could they try and overhaul the whole way in which petrol cars, as we move to electric cars, the whole way they tax cars and driving and road use? Are there things which they could go after where they could say there was an economic case for doing it, but we should also bring in some much-needed revenue?
Well, you're right, they've said they won't raise taxes. They've also said they won't substantially cut spending. They've also said they won't increase government borrowing, and they're not planning to print money. So that is all four of your hands, if you had them, tied behind your back, which means the only weapon you've got for filling that black hole is growth, and it will be very tough to have growth to the level that is needed to fill it. So I think you're probably looking at, I think capital gains tax is, to some extent, is probably right for a few percentage point raise there. I mean, it is a lot cheaper to make profit than it is to make income. You're taxed a lot less on the profit you make on selling assets than you are on earning money. The land tax, not my area. It's not a consumer finance thing that I look at, so I'm not going to comment on that one. I mean, I think there's probably, if you're looking at what you could do, there's been talk for a long time at looking at pensions, whether they've said they won't change the lifetime allowance back and, limit the total amount that people can put into pensions. There's always the annual allowance they could change. As a much more radical thing, they could limit pension tax relief so that everybody gets the same tax relief as basic rate taxpayers. At the moment, higher rate and top rate taxpayers get more from the state towards their pension because they pay more tax. So when you get the tax back, you get more of it. But I think we probably won't hear much of that until September, and we don't really know. At the moment, it's that retail stuff, and there's lots out there. Again, it's those small things that will matter. Carers allowance. If you go a penny over carers allowance at the moment, you would lose the whole thing. And this has been devastated because tens of thousands of people owe substantial back pay for just going pence or pounds over the allowance. What they should be doing at that is looking at stopping the clawback and making it so it's not a cliff edge. Yep. So that if you earn a pound over, you lose a little bit, you don't lose a lot.
Martin,
insurance they could look at.
I'm just going to interrupt because just because you're talking about carers allowance, care has been a massive feature of Ed Davey's campaign, and we can hear him now.
By hearing your concerns. And that is why in this campaign, we fought a really positive campaign about your concerns, about how we wanted to make sure you got help with the cost of living and the difficult economic circumstances. We listened to you on the environment and your concerns about the appalling sewage scandal, and that's why we have policies to tackle that. And above all, we listen to you about your concerns about the crisis in our health system, in our care system. And that's why we put solving that, fixing that, right at the heart of our agenda. During this campaign, I've told you about my own story of caring and being a carer for much of my life. And I want to thank all the people who've come to me and responded in such generosity, telling me that my story is your story. And I want to make sure that we represent the millions of carers out there as we rebuild our health system and do something special to support carers and care workers. And I think if we do that, we can earn your trust. So I promise you, having put it at the heart of our agenda, we are now going to work on health and care. We're going to go to Parliament to represent you. Our first campaign that starts today is a campaign for emergency budget this month for health and care.
So Andrew and Kevin are still with us.
Yeah, that's Ed Davey speaking to party workers at Liberal Democrat HQ.
Sorry, Martin.
Interesting. Yes, it's only that Martin's standing by.
I didn't realise that. I apologise for that.
His points. Martin,
sorry, Martin.
We interrupted you to hear from the Lib Dem leader, who I have to say his tone and mood you wouldn't have expected from someone who'd won such a huge number of seats.
Quite sombre.
For his party. And perhaps he didn't want to sound too enthusiastic. I mean, 71 seats is an extraordinary number for the Lib Dems.
He totally overcompensated.
Right, Martin, we interrupted you. You were going to finish very important point about where the money might come from and what people might expect.
Well, I mean, again, I go back to what this government will need to do is do as many things as possible to change the country that don't cost the Exchequer any money. I mean, it's interesting to hear Ed Davey calling for, an immediate budget for health and social care. Well, he can call for it, but they've won a lot of seats, but they still are, they're not the Labour government, and it's Labour who'll be doing it, and I suspect we'll have a budget in September. Energy bills is a big challenge facing the new government. While they've just gone down, we're expecting them to go up 10% in October, and that's pretty much locked in now. Not the exact 10%, but certainly that they will be rising in October. Probably somewhere between 7 and 13%, I think, is probably the right type of range. That's, of course, going to be a piece of negative news that comes out and could factor into inflation, could be difficult. In conversations I've had, I think they're going to push hard to lower the standing charges. Both Tories and Labour promised me they would do that if they got in, so I will certainly be holding their feet to the fire on that one. I think Other things I'd look at, I mentioned before, insurance, car and home insurance prices have rocketed over the last couple of years. It's the untalked about element of inflation. Car prices up, doubled in the last 3 years. They've told me they will be looking and talking to the regulator about how they bring that back. So I think that's what I expect to see in the next 100 days. Lots of things they can do whereby regulatory or planning changes or looking at policy, they can have an impact, but trying not to cost the Exchequer too much money because the cupboards are pretty bare.
OK, Martin, thank you very much indeed.